Let's talk about the dystopian book community. I know what you're thinking. That's a rather niche topic to talk about. And while in some aspects, yeah, you're right, the dystopian community is a very specific interest, it's also important to observe the genre and just how pervasive it is in culture as a whole. There are aspects of dystopian literature that can be found in almost every community, even outside of books, making it not only relevant, but also extremely important to recognize. And that's what I want to do in today's video. So think back with me to 2012, if you will, when The Hunger Games first hit theaters and people outside of the book community were introduced to the YA dystopian genre. From it came movies like Divergent, The Maze Runner, The Fifth Wave, The Darkest Minds, the list goes on. Book after book was written, and movie after movie was made. And then, as quickly as it came, dystopian stories vanished. Or did they? In today's video, I'm not only going to tell you why the dystopian genre is still very much alive, and was well before the Hunger Games existed, I'm also going to explain to you why we need it, and why the dystopian literature community is so important. In order to do this, I will answer these questions. What does dystopian mean? What is the origin of dystopian literature? What are the main ideas and themes behind dystopian novels? What was the Hunger Games' impact on the dystopian genre as a whole? How do all these questions work to explain the dystopian fiction community and its relevance today? And finally, what are the most popular dystopian novels? So, what does dystopian mean? To understand the genre of dystopian literature, let's first figure out what the word dystopia even means. When searching the term dystopia, it's described as an imagined world or society in which people lead wretched, dehumanized, fearful lives. The second definition of the word is simply anti-utopia. So this begs the question, well, what is a utopia? The dictionary term for utopia is a place of ideal perfection, especially in laws, government, and social conditions. So, a perfect and balanced society. This term was actually first coined in 1516 by Sir Thomas More in his work Utopia, a fictional socio-political satire. The story depicts a perfect society with somewhat unrealistic standards. From this came the idea of an imperfect form of a utopia, which is where dystopias come in. The thing about dystopias, though, that makes them so interesting is that they usually see themselves as utopias. In the process of attempting to create a utopia, the societies end up creating dystopias. This process then gives way for the entirety of the dystopian genre. And this leads us to our next topic. What is the origin of dystopian literature? Now that we have defined what a dystopia is, we can take a look at how the genre came to be. Dystopian literature actually has roots in early works like Plato's Republic and Thomas More's Utopia. However, the dystopian fiction we know today emerged in the 20th century and was heavily influenced by events like World War I and the rise of totalitarian regimes. Works Brave New World by Aldous Huxley and 1984 by George Orwell are two of the main examples that shaped the start of this genre. Dystopian literature, as it is today, often reflects societal fears and anxieties about the direction of human civilization. It often serves as a warning against the dangers of unchecked power and societal complacency. It prompts readers to think critically and examine the world around them and consider the consequences of authoritarianism, conformity, and the erosion of individual rights and freedoms. Common elements include oppressive governments, surveillance, loss of privacy, propaganda, and the dehumanizing effects of technology. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, published in 1932, envisioned a future where technology and genetic engineering are used to maintain social stability, but at the cost of individual freedom and human emotion. George Orwell's 1984, published in 1949, portrayed a grim totalitarian society ruled by a tyrannical government that controls every aspect of its citizens' lives, including their thoughts and memories. These works, along with others like We by Yevgeny Zamyatin and Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, established the themes and conventions of dystopian literature we see today. So what are the main ideas and themes behind dystopian novels? Like I mentioned in the last section, dystopian novels often explore themes related to power, control, and the consequences of corrupt societal structures. Often, dystopian books serve as cautionary tales, warning readers of the dangers of unchecked power, unfettered compliance, and the destruction and corrosion of fundamental human rights and values. On top of this, there are common themes or even tropes seen within these books, a few being totalitarianism and oppression, loss of individuality, surveillance and privacy, technological dystopias, environmental collapse, social inequality, and resistance and rebellion. Dystopian societies are often ruled by oppressive governments that exercise total control over their citizens, which is how totalitarianism and oppression come into play. These regimes restrict freedoms, suppress dissent, and use propaganda and surveillance to maintain power. Often, the antagonists in dystopian books are not specifically one person, though they can be, but rather lie behind an idea or concept being pushed by one group. In dystopian worlds, individuality is often suppressed in favor of conformity. Citizens may be forced to conform to strict societal norms, ideologies, or behavioral standards, sacrificing their autonomy and personal identity in the process. This concept is strong because by taking away individuality, it becomes easier to excuse inhumane acts. With technological dystopian societies, frequently featured are pervasive surveillance technologies used by the government to monitor and control citizens' behavior. This surveillance state erodes privacy rights and creates an atmosphere of constant scrutiny and paranoia. This sense of Big Brother always watching is not a foreign or unrealistic idea, as similar things have been seen in real-life societies. Advances in technology can lead to dystopian scenarios where machines or artificial intelligence govern society, often at the expense of human values and freedom. Themes of dehumanization, reliance on technology, and the ethical implications of scientific progress are common. Some dystopian novels depict worlds ravaged by environmental degradation, climate change, or man-made disasters. These settings highlight the consequences of unchecked exploitation of natural resources and the failure to address ecological issues. Things like technological advances or war are often the causes of such things, though natural disasters have also been used. Larger-than-life problems often require extreme solutions, and this then gives way to the solutions like dystopian governments. Dystopian societies often feature stark divisions between social classes, with a privileged elite enjoying wealth and power, while the majority of the population suffers in poverty and oppression. These differences in access to resources and opportunities fuel social unrest and resistance. But despite the oppressive nature of dystopian regimes, many of these novels also explore themes of resistance and rebellion. Protagonists often challenge the status quo, questioning authority and fighting for freedom, justice, and human dignity. What separates older dystopian books from the newer YA dystopian books, though, is hope. Often in older dystopian books, the resistances would fail as a way to show the strangling power that dystopian regimes have. Newer YA dystopian books, in turn, tend to focus on the call to action and hope for a better future, while still addressing the bleak and destructive nature of dystopian governments. Speaking of YA, let's talk about YA literature, and more importantly, The Hunger Games' impact on the dystopian genre. Now, in all honesty, I was only 7 when the Hunger Games movie was first released, and 4 when the book was first published. I know, I'm a baby fan. But this genre, like it did for so many others before me, intrigued me and completely shaped my middle school and high school self. Why is that? How come, even after the whole dystopian era died, younger readers like myself gravitated to this genre and fell in love with it just as much as before? It really is a simple answer. Dystopian books aren't just some fad that come and go. Like we already mentioned, these books have been around for almost 100 years now. The Hunger Games may have been the most successful at integrating this genre into the YA world, but that does not mean it created it. No, The Hunger Games forever altered the genre. Before that, though, there were a few YA dystopian books: The Giver by Lois Lowry, Unwind by Neil Shusterman, Uglies by Scott Westerfeld, The Barcode Tattoo by Suzanne Wen, and even The Host by Stephanie Meyer are just a few examples of books that were released before The Hunger Games even existed. All of these books were written before The Hunger Games, though The Giver is accredited to being the first example of young adult dystopian literature. So what did The Hunger Games do that was so different? To answer this, let's take a look at the story as a whole. Panem is a society that was destroyed by war, separated into 12 districts that is led by the all-powerful capital. The Hunger Games are a way that the capital keeps control over the districts since the last war had been because of their rebellion. We follow young Katniss Everdeen as she volunteers in place for her sister in the annual reaping ceremony when tributes are chosen to compete in this battle royale-esque event. In her struggle to survive, Katniss unwillingly becomes the face of rebellion against the capital. We see how the choices she makes, while seemingly small and personal, impact the entirety of the nation and eventually lead to a full-on rebellion of the districts. So we are introduced to this dark and grim reality. We follow our protagonist as she is forced to make decisions based on the world she lives in, and we see how her choices impact her society. One of the main focuses of the story is the power of propaganda. Both the capital and the rebels use propaganda to further their causes, and we see how Katniss is used on both sides. Add a little hope and romance, and suddenly this grim story transforms into a cultural hit that it is today. The Hunger Games is different from the works before it because it is not only a socio-political commentary on the dangers of propaganda, it also focuses on a coming-of-age and character-driven arc within Katniss herself. This combination, as well as the success that came with it, paved the way for all the YA dystopian books that followed. While many of the titles fell short where the Hunger Games excelled in world-building and overarching political themes, the hype and introduction to this subgenre, especially when paired with romance, transformed the young adult literature genre. The books that followed, Divergent by Veronica Roth, The Maze Runner by James Dashner, Matched by Ali Condi, The Selection by Kira Cass, The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken, Delirium by Lauren Oliver, and many, many more, all followed the Hunger Games and became classics within the young adult book community. So now that we went over all of that information, how do all of these questions work to explain the dystopian fiction community and its relevance today? While I could go on for hours about the intricacy and the allegorical power behind dystopian books, this video essay is meant to focus on the impact and importance of the genre and its community as a whole. So why is the dystopian literature community significant? We already discussed what dystopian books tend to focus on, so let me ask you this. How often do the political standings of your country impact your life? Almost every form of civilization has a hierarchy of power and thus a form of government. How often do human faults and selfishness get in the way of a society's decision-making? Dystopian novels address these kinds of issues. They provide a lens through which readers can examine and critique current societal trends, injustices, and power dynamics, shedding light on such issues as a means of prompting readers to reflect on their own society's trajectory. Dystopian books provide valuable insights into the human condition and serve as powerful tools for understanding and engaging with the world around us. Dystopian literature often serves as a warning against the dangers of complacency and the erosion of civil liberties. By portraying extreme scenarios of oppression and dystopia, these books encourage readers to recognize early warning signs of societal problems and take action to prevent their escalation. These books take worst-case scenarios and use them to warn about the possible outcomes of a specific way of thinking or governance. In some cases, dystopian novels anticipate future developments in technology, politics, and society with surprising accuracy. Authors draw on existing trends and extrapolate potential outcomes, offering insights into the consequences of certain choices and policies if left unchecked. This way of writing requires a deep connection not only with the genre and skill of writing, but also with the psychology and nature of humanity. By better understanding those around them, dystopian authors are actually able to predict the path a certain belief can take. By being able to predict outcomes, this also gives authors the opportunity to offer hope and inspiration to fight such outcomes. Despite their bleak settings, dystopian novels often feature protagonists who resist oppression and fight for change. These stories can inspire readers to stand up against injustice, advocate for human rights, and work towards building a more equitable and just society. Dystopian literature has a lasting cultural impact, shaping public discourse and influencing popular narratives about the future. Elements and themes from dystopian novels often find their way into other forms of media, such as films, television shows, and video games, further reinforcing their relevance and reach. So the dystopian book community is more than just a preference of literature. Instead, these books and media are a way of promoting a better understanding of human nature and the pitfalls of humanity. Dystopian books teach of corruption and manipulation to warn people of the reality of these problems. In a way, dystopian books serve as a wake-up call, encouraging readers to read between the lines and not take everything at face value. Now, as someone who's a part of this community, it's easy for me to talk about the strength and power behind these books. I don't do so lightly, nor in a way to make myself seem better than others. I truly believe that the dystopian literature community is a large component in human understanding, as well as free will and individual thinking.
There's a deeper kind of intelligence that comes with diving into this community, and it's one I would challenge everyone to try. When it comes down to it, the reality we live in will always be a part of our lives, and why should we not try and better understand the life we are living? And some people may be turned off from dystopian books because of their political focus, but what part of life is not impacted by politics? When it comes down to it, what are politics if not a way of trying to better understand how we live with one another? To quote George Orwell himself, in our age, there is no such thing as keeping out of politics. All issues are political issues, and politics itself is a mass of lies, evasions, folly, hatred, and schizophrenia. So maybe the dystopian book community is more relatable and relevant than it seems. Maybe dystopian books are less of a form of entertainment, though they certainly can be, and are rather a different lens for absorbing humanity through. The dystopian book community is extremely relevant, especially today, and to understand this community is to be a part of it. And now that is power. That wraps up my essay on the community itself, but now it's time for the part I know you've been waiting for. What are the most popular dystopian novels? This list I compiled with knowledge of books that I have heard a lot about and books that I looked up and researched, and just the ones that seemed to pop up most often when dystopian books were mentioned. Starting off, we have 1984 by George Orwell, Animal Farm by George Orwell, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, We by Yevgeny Zenatin, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, Divergent by Veronica Roth, The Maze Runner by James Dashner, The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken, Uglies by Scott Westerfeld, Scythe by Neil Shusterman, The Giver by Lois Lowry, Unwind by Neil Shusterman, Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, Wool by Hugh Howey, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, Battle Royale by Koshan Takami, Among the Hidden by Margaret Peterson Haddix, and Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, there are lots more books that I could mention, and I could go on and on for hours, but these were just the top 20 that I seemed to see the most of when I researched dystopian books.
Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you've taken something away from it, if at least not just been entertained. I love dystopian books, and I'm beyond grateful to be a part of this community. And speaking of, a little segue, my own book, Providence, is set to release in just a few weeks on May 17th. I can't believe it. I'm so excited. So yeah, let me just tell you a little about my book, because, right? Providence is a YA dystopian novel that focuses on the beginnings of a dystopian society. We follow the main character, Kaylee, as she is thrust into a world she never imagined and forced to face a reality that threatens to destroy everything she once knew and loved. Included are themes of hope, trust, and even a little bit of enemies to lovers romance, because why not? If this sounds like something you'd like to read, it's currently available for ebook pre-order on Amazon, and I will have the link below. So if you love dystopian books like me and you're looking for a new read that kind of maybe reminds you of Hunger Games, Divergent, Shatter Me, the good YA dystopian, then you should check out my website at www.carlyhoffmanauthor.com. I'll also have a link to that below. I have all the details about Providence there, and it's coming release, so you can stay up to date. I'm so excited. I am so excited about this book finally being published. I've been writing it for 5 years, so, it's about time. So, yeah, definitely check that out. And that's my little self advertising hype, read my book. Get excited. I am. Anyway, thank you so much for watching the video, and like, subscribe, all the fun stuff on YouTube, and I will see you guys next time.